This is the Hollywood Gothique Halloween Horror Podcast, brought to you by HollywoodGothique.com, the online guide to fantasy films, mystery movies, Halloween horror, and sci-fi cinema events in Los Angeles. When night falls on the Pacific, the land of sunshine and surf transforms into a shadowy city of angels, teeming with sinister and surreal forms of entertainment. Interested in exploring this labyrinthine landscape of nighttime terrors? Then come along with us, if you dare. Hello, this is Steve Petrosky, caretaker of Hollywood Gothique. Our debut audio podcast for the week of Friday, September 20, will explore the dank and dismal horrors of the Wicked Lit Halloween Theater Festival, which begins its 2013 run on October 3rd. This year, Wicked Lit will present dramatizations of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The New CATACOMB, H.P. Lovecraft's The Lurking Fear, and Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, all staged in the Mountain View Mausoleum in Altadena. Wicked Lit is a unique Halloween attraction. Each year it presents a trio of one-act plays staged in authentic locations. Audiences arrive at a central courtyard where story guides divide them into groups and lead them to areas in and around the mausoleum, often moving from room to room to follow the action. The authentic atmosphere and the complete absence of the proverbial fourth wall create an immersive experience that lasts from your arrival on the grounds until your final departure. Wicked Lit was created in 2009 by Unbound Productions, a theater company dedicated to presenting plays based on classic literature staged in unusual locations. The founding members are Paul Millay, Jeff G. Rack, and Jonathan Josephson, who is my guest today. Josephson wrote or co-wrote all three of this year's adaptations, which are being directed by Millay, Rack, and guest director Douglas Clayton. Josephson sat down with me earlier this week to discuss what Unbound Productions plans to achieve with this year's incarnation of Wicked Lit. Let's start with what's new, and I'm thinking not just in terms of, what stories you're doing this year, but having done this for a few years now, what are you trying maybe to achieve this year that you haven't got in previous years, or what are you trying to recreate that worked last time? What was your overall goal when you were looking at 2013 Halloween?
Yeah, and I totally understand what you're saying, and there's definitely some new approaches to the show beyond just the new stories. But of course, the new stories are a very exciting part of that. One of the big ones is the what we internally call the experience, and that is before the show starts, during the intervals as the three different stories reset, and that we're introducing essentially a fourth show, which we're calling Mask of the Red Death Experience. And what that is Paul Millay, who's one of the creators of Wicked Lit and co-artistic director of Unbound, has created a series of performances with its own small narrative that are all inspired by the works of Edgar Allan Poe, and follows the track of the Mask of the Red Death, but it isn't an adaptation of that story. So when you arrive at 7 o'clock, you'll see everything from songs inspired by Poe to improv to dance to characters who are drawn from Poe, and things like that. So it's a really cool enhancement of the show, and basically there is something going on all the time from 7 o'clock until the curtain call at about 10 o'clock. That's a big change from last year when we had performances during the intervals, but there wasn't really a theme or a through line. Now there is. So
it's continuous entertainment now, not just three plays separated by downtime.
Exactly. And then also the performers who are doing this pre-show and interval are also your story guides. So that same continuity of having actors and having the experience go throughout is still very much intact. So we're really excited about that.
Basically, the audience is immersed from the minute they walk in.
Absolutely, yeah. As soon as you leave your car and you enter the Pompeian court, you're greeted with the soundscape and the lighting design, and then when you enter the courtyard, there's a team of 9 actors and also dancers, singers. We have a musician. We have a lot of different things going on that just will make the whole thing more fun. So people should really think of getting there early and arriving by 7, because there's a whole other part of the show.
Moving on now, we'll talk about the specific stories in a minute, but I'm thinking in terms of, you've done this a few years, you've picked some stories you wanted to do going into 2013. What qualifies for a good story? What are you looking for when you read a piece of literature? Besides it's a good story, it's going to somehow have to work in your location location and with your cast and that kind of thing? What are you looking for when you're casting about?
There's a number of things. The first one, first and foremost, is it has to be a great dramatic story. It can't just be really interesting. It can't just be about an interesting idea. A lot of Lovecraft and a lot of Poe is sort of thinking about things, or wouldn't it be interesting if, or isn't this a scary idea? It has to have a story, a beginning, middle, and end. Characters that are searching for something, that desperately need things, that want to achieve goals beyond their station, or get revenge for something that happened to them personally. And that's actually a lot of where the adaptation comes in, is that there's these really interesting ideas, and then how do we dramatize them? Another thing that we absolutely look for, and you touched on it a little bit, is that it has to work in our venue. We don't want to shoehorn anything into the Mausoleum. We want a story that lives organically in a cemetery or in the world of the architecture that exists on the grounds. Obviously, there's a willful suspension of disbelief anytime you go to a theater event. But we want, if they're talking about a giant tulip tree in Legend of Sleepy Hollow, we don't have a tulip tree, but we have a fantastic tree that Ichabod is looking at, and he's thinking about the Headless Horseman, and you're there. We don't want you to imagine the tree. That defeats the whole purpose of being in an alternative venue. So we look specifically for things that fit our time period and our ideas that will lend themselves to an audience. We also think about logistics. What are the physical places in the Mausoleum and cemetery that can hold 35 people for a performance? And we also look for diversity. We don't want the same kinds of story. We don't want 3 adventure stories of guys running around with guns being chased by a monster. We do have one of those stories this year, but it's balanced by other kinds of narrative, other kinds of storytelling approaches in terms of use of the original author's words, in terms of time period, and in terms of theme. So there's really a lot. And this year is actually a really tremendous culmination of stories that we've had for a long time. And the first time that we've ever brought a show back, we're bringing back Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was actually done in our 2009 production, but only 350 people saw that. So we wanted to bring it back and reimagine it in the cemetery, which it wasn't produced in the cemetery the first time. New CATACOMB is brand new, and is tailor-made for the art gallery and for the crypts. And the art gallery is a space that we've never used before for Wicked Lit. And then The Lurking Fear is this amazing adventure story. We've never quite done anything quite like it. It's this Indiana Jones-like run, because there's something out there and it's going to kill you, and you got to just move. So it moves much more than any other show we've ever done. The story guides treat the audience much more differently. They're obviously respectful and everything like that, but they had their relationship with the audience is you have to get out of here, you're not safe, and that's just really fun. So all of those things go into reading the stories, and we've read hundreds of stories over the years, and these are the ones that we feel hit all of these different categories. There are a lot of plays that are just about, there's people and it's scary and it's dark and then something horrible happens. That's not enough. It's got to have elevated themes. It's got to have dramatic action that's going to sustain a 30-minute play.
What about the fear factor? Clearly, you're not doing a Halloween haunted house jump scare kind of thing. Do you get feedback or your own sense from watching the audience that people think it's scary enough or they want more? I mean, hopefully they're not waiting for somebody to jump out at them with a chainsaw, but is there any consideration of how much, if at all, do we need to intensify the scares that we're delivering?
Yes, actually, and that's something that we do get a lot of feedback. Our audience is this wonderful cross-section of traditional theater goers who are going to Center Theater Group and the Pasadena Playhouse, and people who are going to Halloween Horror Nights and Dark Harbor and Delusion. The people who come to our show want a theatrical experience, but they also want something that fits the Halloween season. So yeah, we definitely, our show is not terrifying. You're not going to be screaming from wire to wire, but this is probably the scariest, most horror-filled production that we've done. Mostly because of our use of things like darkness, of our use of things like surprise. There's a lot more of that this year. There's nothing that touches the audience. There's nothing that gets in your face. But there definitely are some terrible things that happen, and it's just presented in it's a much more scary, dramatic way. Now that's mostly the new CATACOMB. Lurking Fear has some of that too, because you've got these cult figures and they don't die, and there's a lot of there's a body count in that one too. So people are just dying left and right. And Sleepy Hollow is the least sort of horrifying. It's scary because you're in a cemetery and there's a headless horseman and he's out there, but it's not the same kind of thing. So we have upped up the scariness of it a little bit, but we're not Halloween Horror Nights, and we never want to be. You know, we're not even Delusion. We don't want that experience. We want classic horror literature performed in an amazing, intense, engaging way. And it is going to be scary. It's mostly going to be more spooky and frightening as opposed to terrifying.
As someone who's been doing this for a few years and looking towards what you're going to do this year, what are the strengths of Wicked Lit that you want to build on? And conversely, what are maybe things in the past that you thought, there's some room, I see what I can do next year that's going to make that even better?
Sure. Well, we love, our favorite thing about Wicked Lit is the immersive nature of it. Is that you get to be in this amazing space. You get to walk in among the headstones of the cemetery, through the hallways of the crypts, and see this play happen all around you. And it's a story that you probably haven't seen before or heard before, and we can present this in a 360-degree, fully produced, unique, special experience that just has an audience going, oh my God, this is amazing the entire time. That's really what makes us unique. We feel, you know, everywhere you look, our production design and our cast and our everybody is making this show 100% complete. And yeah, that it is specific to Halloween, that we love that season, that we love those stories, that there's so much tension and fun with makeup and monsters and guns and explosions, and Cthulhu rips through the sky, and, you know, murder and intrigue and all these kinds of things that the horror genre gives you, that if you just put it into regular circumstances, it's like, wait, is that melodrama? Is that over the top? But when you go horror, it's like, no, if it's not, you know, people getting ripped in half and, you know, long lost family members returning from the grave and things like that, like, you're not even in the ballpark. So the horror genre does so much for us, and we just love that. We love that there's a way to just get into these things that people really like. That's also just a big benefit of Wicked Lit, is we love it, we love doing it, and people love going. In terms of weaknesses, a huge thing that we've undertaken for us this year is just streamlining the production process for our crew and our designers. It's probably invisible to our audience, at least we hope it is, but mounting the show is very, very difficult. There's no power. It's an old building. There's so many things that we've had to figure out and really make theatrical magic to make the show happen. And we started pre-production on the show in March. So we feel that the show is not only going to be a tremendous event for our audiences, but that our cast and our crew and everybody who's been working so hard on this is just also having a fantastic experience.
When you start a project, if it doesn't work the first year, at least you've got the novelty. Well, no one's done it before. After 3 or 4 years, I think there must be pressure now to ace it, because you've had the experience, people have been before and they're going to come again, and gee, what am I going to get this year that I didn't? Do you have a sense of that when you're working on this show this year?
Absolutely. And it's not only for our audience, but it's for ourselves. But we definitely get that feedback. And it's not that the audience says to us, like, oh, you know, it better be better than last year, but they say, wow, this one was better than last year, and just the look on their face and the feedback on their Facebook page and the emails that they send us, and we thrive on that. So we're never satisfied in terms of making the show better. That's one of the reasons why this Mask of the Red Death experience was added into this year's show. That's one of the reasons why we added a guest director into the process last year, so that there's just more creative minds thinking behind everything that we do. That's why we've basically doubled the production crew this year and multiplied our tech time by a week. Everything is the special effects are going to be better realized. That's one reason why we wanted to bring back Sleepy Hollow. Is Sleepy Hollow was part of the very, very first Wicked Lit ever, and we were just figuring this out. Now that we have a better sense of how to use the space, how to use power and special effects, and use the resources that we've built over the last 5 years, we feel like we can make that horse chase in the cemetery with Ichabod and the Headless Horseman. We can just make that so much better fully realized. So we are our toughest critics by far, the three of us who founded this company. We push ourselves and push each other to make everything Disneyland. You know, we hold ourselves to the standard of Disneyland and Cirque du Soleil. We don't think of ourselves as a small theater company, as a nonprofit organization with a small budget. We think of ourselves as how are we approaching this as a premier, immersive theatrical event. And we're very fortunate, but we're very proud of our very strong track record that people love our show. They spread the word. They come back. They see our other productions. Maybe they came out for Wicked Lit in the Cemetery because they wanted to see what that is about. But then they go to History Lit at the Pasadena Museum of History, which has nothing to do with horror. Or they go to one of our Flash performances at Barney's Beanery or the West Hollywood Library. Or they make a donation and they become a supporter of our organization. And we know that all of that is attributed to this idea that we're not satisfied with it being good enough. We're not satisfied with people being impressed. We only approach becoming satisfied when people say, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like it." And that's hard, that's really hard, because it means I don't sleep for 3 months out of the year, and Jeff is at the Mausoleum building dozens and dozens of hours and spending all this time, and we have production meetings that go until 2 o'clock in the morning, but we wouldn't do it any other way.
So Arthur Conan Doyle's The New Catacombs. What's the audience going to get out of this? What's the appeal, and how are you using the location? Where is it set? In the catacombs, I assume, somewhere?
I wrote this adaptation, and in a way, it's Arthur Conan Doyle's nod to Cask of Amontillado, but it has a very contemporary and biting twist to it, which I think is really fun. Yes, it is set in the art gallery, a location again on the property that Wicked Lit audiences have never seen before, and then it descends into the catacombs in a very fun way. So it does go into spaces that audiences never seen before. It also goes into spaces that audiences have seen before, but they probably won't recognize, because they're used in a totally different way, which is really, really fun. But the big thing about that play is you're basically following a intellectual who's discovered this new ancient Roman crypt through the dark, and you only have this little piece of twine to guide you through the hallways, and the audience will literally be following a piece of twine that they have to hold on to. Obviously, we're taking precautions to make sure that it's safe and everything like that, but there's a visceral component to it. And then I can't give away the end, but man, it's got an ending that it's the most intense ending we've ever had.
You've mentioned Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This one's got to be set outside.
Yeah, so Legend of Sleepy Hollow is completely outside, and it uses an enormous footprint of the Mausoleum. The nature of the adaptation, and I also wrote this adaptation, is that the characters in the play, so Ichabod and Brom Bones and all those people that we know from the story, exist both as characters and also as storytellers. So they step in and out of the story, both interacting with each other and also narrating. So it's this very large, buoyant, theatrical, lyrical adaptation that's really unlike any of our other adaptations ever. There's a lot of Washington Irving's original words, and it's this very beautifully laid out language, which I'm just such a huge fan of. Ichabod is the only one who doesn't also narrate, as the story sort of all circulates around him. And again, the audience is going to move. The actors move around the audience a lot. They're above you, they're below you, they're to the side, they're behind you, they're within your group. It's really this fantastic weaving staging that Jeff has done. Jeff Rack is directing Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Doug Clayton is directing The New Catacomb. Doug directed for us last year. He did Wake Not the Dead, but he's the only person other than the three founders of the company ever to direct for us. And then the end of Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the appearance of the Headless Horseman, spoiler alert, if he ever appears, is in the cemetery. So we are utilizing the cemetery in a really wonderful way, something that we didn't do last year, and our audiences wanted, and we wanted too. So we're excited to be back in the cemetery.
Obviously, the Headless Horseman must be quite a technical challenge to achieve in a live setting outdoors without a curtain to fall and hide anything that goes wrong.
Absolutely, and we have a dedicated special effects team that has been working pretty much on just that for about 2 months.
Is there going to be a horse?
There's not going to be a really, really real flesh and blood horse, but there are going to be all manner of other things that are going to be much better than having a real horse.
And finally, of the 3 stories that you're adapting, Lovecraft's The Lurking Fear, you said, is kind of a run-and-jump adventure.
Yes, we're really excited about this one. Jeff and I collaborated on this script. Basically, you're in this small town in the Catskills, you're seeking refuge in the church, and then you have to find this monster and kill it before it kills you. It's kidnapping people, it's going underground, there's also these weird cult-like figures that pray to the old ones and of the Lovecraft mythos, and you just gotta move. We call this one an adventure story. It's horror, terrible things are happening, and it has that sort of elevated sense of drama, but you're also, there's 2 bounty hunters and these 2 small-town cops, and then there's this reporter who's caught in the middle, and they're all trying to figure out what's going on, and they all have secrets and lies and mysteries, and our main guy has an eye patch, and then this guy's got a grenade and a machete, it's just this very, very fun, exciting play where you just got to be ready to move.
How do you go about deciding who's going to do what? I mean, you've adapted or co-adapted the stories this year, but Paul Millett directs one, Jeff Rack directs one, Douglas Clayton. Does everybody just come in and pick their favorite, or are there strengths that you're playing to?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of been different every year, and we kind of want the process to speak to us, what the plays are and what the locations are. Paul, and his last name is spelled Millet but pronounced Malay. He, when as playwrights, we read a story, we say, I want to adapt, and everybody else says, great, adapt it. Then when the actual draft comes around, the three of us talk about it, and we say, okay, where does it fit in the location? Where is it relative to the other shows that we're thinking about doing? How is it going to fit 35 people? All these other things. And we have a artistic director discussion and a producer discussion about the logistics. I wrote Sleepy Hollow the very first year just because I was so taken with the story, and I went to Sleepy Hollow and I loved doing it. And I took this very different kind of approach. And it had always been in my mind to try and bring it back so that we could do that final scene in a real cemetery. That particular adaptation has been done a number of times all over the country and actually all over the world, but we haven't done it since 2009, so it was just time to bring it back. And Paul directed it the first time, and so, it sort of came about organically. Well, Jeff, why don't you take a stab at it and see what happens and do something totally different? And Paul's been completely supportive of it, and I love watching what Jeff has done. Jeff started with Lurking Fear, and he was working on a really great draft that was interesting, and then I had some ideas of how to make that draft even more engaging, and these bounty hunters and all this other stuff, and we decided to write it together. So we've been writing collaboratively, something we haven't really done before. It's just happened organically, and Paul knew that he wanted to direct it, even though he didn't know what the play was going to be until about June, which was actually really fun. So having all three of us collaborate on one play was really exciting. And then with New CATACOMB, that was just a story that had been kicking around in my head for a while. Doug was such a joy to work with last year that we wanted to work with him again. I've got a lot of other responsibilities in terms of marketing and press and publicity and front of house and all these things, so I'm not directing anything this year, which is great for me and also great for everybody else, because that gives Paul an opportunity to direct Mask of the Red Death experience and also do some of the adapting there. So we're all represented as writers and directors, but we allow the process to be organic and really put the best shows forward.
To wrap it up, if you were talking to someone who had seen the previous shows, and you've probably hinted at what your answer is going to be to this already, but someone who's been before, been a few times, or once or twice or whatever, and is going, well, what are they going to do this year that I didn't see last year? What would be the one key thing you would say that, hey, this is what you're going to get in 2013, whether it's a Headless Horseman or what's the must-see item here?
Well, I'll give you two. One is more general and one's more specific. The general one is that we've been saying basically since November 15th of last year that Wicked Lit 2013 is going to be the best Wicked Lit ever. And we believe that to be true because of the strength of the writing, the storytelling, the use of the space, and everything else. Everything that people have loved about Wicked Lit up until now, everything that we've learned up until now, it's culminating to the point that this will be the best Wicked Lit ever. But if I was going to give you one thing that you just have to see, I mean, I love all of my babies. All of my plays are my babies, and I love all of the work that Paul and Jeff and Doug have been doing, but you got to see The Legend of Sleepy Hollow in a real cemetery. I mean, it's such an iconic story, and the staging and the special effects are going to be so tremendous that even if you don't believe me that this is going to be the best Wicked Lit ever, even if you didn't even like any of our previous shows, I know that people like Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and you've got to see what Jeff's been doing in the cemetery.
That sounds good to me.
Well, I know you're going to be there.
Yeah, definitely. I will be there. Wouldn't miss it.
We have a preview performance on October 3rd, which is a little less expensive than any of our other performances. We'd love for people to come early in the run. And that the pre-show starts at 7 o'clock. Curtain is 7:30, but there's a pre-show at 7 o'clock. So if you want to come early, get a good parking spot, and enjoy the entirety of Mask of the Red Death experience, that would be wonderful.
All right, thank you very much then. Have a good day.
All right, thanks so much.
Wicked Lit runs at the Mountain View Mausoleum and Cemetery Thursdays through Sundays in October, plus the weekend of November 1 and 2. The address is 2300 Marengo Avenue in Altadena. Get more information, including ticket prices, at unboundproductions.org. For more information on fantasy films, mystery movies, Halloween horror, and sci-fi cinema events in Los Angeles, visit HollywoodGothique.com. This is Steve Bedrosky, signing off. The night grows cold, the children sleep, counting herds of zombie sheep. Sacks of candy haunt their dreams, delicious fruit of Halloween. This podcast is copyright 2013, Steve Bedrosky. All music composed by Steve Bedrosky, performed by Gothique, all rights reserved, no unauthorized duplication without permission.